CFO of Trivago, the world's leading search engine for hotels. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Axel, last time you and I met was the day of the IPO.
That is correct, 16th of December.
Are you breathing?
Am I breathing?
Are you still breathing after the IPO?
Yeah, it was quite all right. But anyway, it was just one day in the development of the company.
Yeah.
But it was quite some work, that's right.
So listen, what we typically say is that, you know, it's the beginning of the next stage, the next part of Trivago's life, or the company's life when they do the IPO.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really see it as a step changer in the development of the company. For us, it was just one other thing. So opening a new market, going to the public market, and so it didn't really change that much, and we think that's a good thing. And so for us, the impact was biggest on the legal and the finance department, obviously, but then the rest of the company is more or less unaffected.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the way to think about it. It is just one thing that at some point in time you want to do, but it's not the best day or in your life or something, as it's not that special.
Yeah. Well, you know.
I know you don't like to hear that, but
no, what I do like to hear is the fact that, you know, business goes on, you know, and at the end of the day, the whole point is that you have to stay focused on your business, because if you don't stay focused on your business, the results won't show. And the results that we've seen, it's easy now. You have one more measurement since you go IPO, and that's your share price.
That is true, but then on the other hand, you have to be a bit careful with that. And so, you know, when you talk initially to your bankers and you know, no matter who you talk to, everybody is very focused on the share price. But what is really the share price? I mean, the share price in the long term is how good your strategy is and how good you deliver. Because in the long term, people will appreciate that you deliver a good strategy. In the short term, it is really it is basically a price that is based on little data points. So when you think about the IPO, most of the investors we met once. So how much of the long-term vision and of our capability on delivering our strategy into that vision can you really communicate in 1 hour? So that the data density in a way is very low. And so that's why we don't really focus on the share price that much. Yeah. Of course, you know, everything else being equal, higher is always better, but for us it is really the long-term perspective, and that's how we manage the business, and that's what we communicate internally as well.
So I think that's clearly been a measurement of success, because clearly the share price has, from the day of, I know you're not focused on it, but you shouldn't be too shy about it either. I mean, the day of the IPO it was $11, now it's trading at $18. I think we have a slide here showing the tremendous development over time, and of course you can't put yourself blind on the share price. You have to focus on delivering the strategy, and one key aspect of the whole strategy is really how do you engage and how do you change your everyday life in terms of managing your business. How dramatically has it changed for you?
So yeah, I mean, as I said, I mean, for the finance and the legal team, everything has changed, obviously, because the legal requirements are very different, and you need to be much better, much faster in almost everything that you do. For the rest of the company, I would say hardly anything has changed. The long-term strategy is the same. We are focusing on implementing the long-term strategy. We are not managing by the quarter. We are not, again, I mean, we are not looking at the share price every day, and so whether it's up or down is a lot less relevant than us making progress against our long-term objectives. So excellent. I would say, again, other than that department, impact has been very, very limited.
And I know that well, first of all, not many people know maybe that Trivago's headquarters are based in Düsseldorf in Germany. And you have more than 1,300 employees, and your main office is Düsseldorf, isn't it?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we have more than 1,000 of our employees in Düsseldorf, and we believe very much in a one-campus concept. So the other locations that we have are predominantly development locations where we have developers. But then all the core functions are basically in Düsseldorf. And so what we typically do is when we enter a new market or when we are scaling up a new market, we are recruiting people from that country and then bring them to Düsseldorf. So as a result, we have got less than 1/3 of the overall employees being German. A very international team in one location.
Yeah, I heard something like 50 nationalities working at Trivago.
That sounds right, yeah.
That sounds right. And right before we walked up on stage, you were telling me that you have something called the Academy at Trivago, and you use that as a tool to kind of communicate to your employees what does it mean to be a public company, why IPO, and so on. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I think culture and getting everybody engaged around why you did the IPO and what it means for them is important.
Yeah, I mean, the Academy is a concept that we have anyhow, which is just a small piece of the overall puzzle, as you said, of our overall culture. And so the purpose of the Academy format is to educate employees on topics that are not part of their normal daily job. So in a way, to widen the perspective. So you would have a priest coming to talk about ethics. You would have a backpacker coming who basically traveled the world for a year and just gives his learnings out of that trip, or then something special like the IPO, where we think there are learnings for the overall business and for the daily business, how important focus can be, for example, and how much you can get done if you're really focused on something in a very short time period.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, from that perspective, to your point about doing something in a short period of time, how long did it take for you to actually, once you decided to go for the IPO?
So we had the kickoff meeting for the IPO project beginning of July, and then we listed on the, as you know, on the 16th of December. So it was basically a project of 5 months.
And from that point, it was an interesting time because it was just during the election period, or right after, wasn't it? And were you concerned about the impact of that?
It depends again on your perspective. What is the listing day, and how important is really that specific day? So when you talk to a lot of people, it is all about, okay, this is a very good market, this is not a good market, this is good timing, not a good timing, this will give very good pricing, not so good pricing. If you focus on that day, these are all things that matter a lot. If it's very important to you, and almost like your wedding, yeah? If that is the day that has to be fantastic, all these things do matter. If it's just one step in your overall development, in a way, it doesn't really matter that much. And that's the perspective that we took. For us, it was much more important to focus on it because it takes away a lot of management attention. Get it done, and then focus on the business again.
Yeah.
And so it didn't, to us, it didn't matter at all whether it might have had an impact on the demand, pricing, whatever. I don't know, but again, I mean, I don't think it matters to us.
It's an interesting reflection because I think, to your point, it is an inflection point in terms of your growth. But at the end of the day, you just stay focused, you deliver, and if you have that strategy, if you have that communication with the market, you can succeed. And we typically say that a good company can succeed at any day, and I think you're a perfect example of that. So even if it was an uncertain period, you managed quite well. I mean, not only to raise $300 million plus, but also to develop your company over time as a share. So a fantastic success to you in that aspect. So from that, going on, when you look at the choosing of markets, you're a European company. Why is the US so important for you? I mean, from a public perspective, but is there a commercial aspect as well?
So to start with, the US is by far our largest market. And that might have an impact on the listing location, but for us the much more important reason was that almost all of our online travel peers are listed at Nasdaq in the US. And so the effect that has is that you have got very, very knowledgeable and sophisticated investors and analysts. And that is really one thing that is very important to us, that we get structured feedback from people very, very knowledgeable about the industry, spanning all of their time or a lot of their time on the industry and giving us input and feedback on our strategy, which is something that as a fast growth company you don't necessarily get in that condensed manner, because you have so many daily challenges that you have to focus on running your business. So the outside input and the market input in a way is more limited, and for us this has already been extremely helpful to get that insight from the outside world, from people that are really experts in the online travel market.
Would you say that's one of the big differences of becoming, from a private landscape to a public landscape?
I would say that's for sure one of the biggest benefits that we see so far.
That you have this external coach.
Absolutely, and you have it regularly, and you need to explain why you're so committed and excited about your strategy, and you just get very, very interesting questions because people don't only look at you, but look at all the other players in the market. So the feedback cycle in a way is much faster, and we can do these small adjustments and tweaks much, much better than we could have before.
It's a good point. And I think, there's a lot of trepidation in the markets now. I think there's a lot of capital in the private markets, so companies tend to stay private longer. We've in fact, as Nasdaq, seen that development, and we launched something called Nasdaq Private Market to help companies stay and manage the private landscape by, organizing liquidity outside and so on. And I guess at the end of the day, liquidity is an important aspect in this whole context. So from a recruitment point of view and from an overall development point of view, I assume being a public company helps you to develop that kind of strategy as well.
I think that is probably right, but we haven't seen that effect to a significant degree yet. I think
it's probably too early.
It's too early to see that, but obviously it is much more tangible. So we've been giving out significant equity incentives from day one, basically.
Okay.
But of course, it helps if it is something that is more tangible and measurable in a way in attracting talent. But I think it's too early to say.
Listen, Axel, so the share price, you keep on saying don't refer to the share price, but I refer to the share price. You've done well, and it is a good measure, and it's not something you should just focus on. But if you would have done something, if you look back now, rewind the tapes, would you have done something differently?
Yes. What I would have done different, I would have listened a lot less to the conventional advice and tried to do it even faster, to reduce the time where we got distracted from running the business, and just in a way get it out of the way sooner. So not go for the 1800th iteration of the investor presentation. You have got years and years to communicate your strategy. So how much does it really matter that you have the final last tweak on it in your 60 minutes that you have in the process, and these kind of things. So I think we could have done it a couple of weeks earlier, and that would have allowed us to focus those couple of weeks more on the business. And at the growth we are having, last year about 50%, that is worth a lot. Yeah,
well, I hear you. I mean, and from an efficiency point of view, clearly you seem to have been running quite a well-run shop. So you were simulating almost to be a public company prior to going public?
So yes, we had some benefits, and the benefit was that Expedia owns a majority stake, or has been owning a majority stake in Trivago for quite some time. So we had some reporting requirements, both in terms of Sarbanes-Oxley, but also in terms of monthly and quarterly financials. That has helped for sure in terms of optimizing the processes. But it was only half of it because, of course, the materiality now is very different. So we have to do a lot more and a lot more granular. And given that we have listed in the US, we have started to prepare US GAAP financials, which we hadn't had to do before.
Okay. So from that perspective, what's the advice you would give to a CFO, I mean, in preparing for an IPO? You were helped, of course, by the fact that you had Expedia behind you, that were putting pressure on you. But what are the key sort of lessons learned that you would put in the hands, besides the fact that you would have done it a lot quicker? Many others would probably say, well, let's take the time to do it right. What would be the key advice that you would give a CFO?
I think there's one other point that stands out, and the jury is still out whether that is a good or bad advice. So we don't know yet. But what we realized was that there is a lot of conventional wisdom how to do things. This is how this is done. This is how this is done. And we just felt in a lot of these discussions that just wouldn't be us, and that wouldn't be the way how we would do it. And we decided in a lot of situations just against that and to break the convention. We think that that is better because we come across much more authentic, and it is much easier to understand how we think about the world, how we manage businesses with these, even if they are just small differences. And so that's why my advice would be don't take everything for granted that your advisors tell you, and find your own way. And so far, at least, we haven't seen any negative reaction. If anything, a positive reaction to these kind of decisions that we made.
I think that's a very healthy approach to test the waters in that perspective, because I think there's a lot of copy-paste in the markets in terms of trying to replicate what has been done before. And clearly, if that's the case, probably no one would be here at Collision, because everybody's trying to disrupt. So
absolutely, yeah.
You, in a way, disrupted the IPO market by...
I don't
that's
know.
good.
Not everything is disruptive. There are even some small things where you just feel more comfortable and you think that is more you, and just do it.
Listen, we're getting close to the end, and tell us a bit about Trivago. What's next for Trivago? I mean, what's happening that's exciting in your terms, in terms of the product, in terms of the overall development?
So there are many things that are exciting. So I'm not sure that the time is sufficient for that, but let me just pick one thing that I think is very important. So Trivago is a hotel search site, and so what we do, and all our focus is to find for you on your next trip the ideal accommodation at the best price. And so when you think about it, if we decompose that, it's finding the ideal place for that specific trip, and that might be different for a business trip or a trip with your wife or your family. Getting the availability, where can you actually still book that place? And then the third one, find the best price. And I think when we think about these three challenges, the second and the third one are actually quite well addressed today with the product that we are having. I mean, we've got 1.4 million hotels on the platform, more than 200 advertisers that give us prices and availability. So I think that is not done, but that is quite advanced. On the choice, on the search side, there are great innovations and developments to come. And I guess the key thing that will happen going forward is that the search will become more and more granular and more tailored to your specific needs. So just to give you an example, if a gym is very important to you, you can basically say, I want to have all the hotels or apartments that have a gym or don't have a gym. But it might actually make a difference to you whether it is a 24/7 gym, whether it has new equipment or old equipment. So a lot of these dimensions that are used currently to search are binary, and they will become more a continuous scale, which will help to tailor the relevance of the search results to you individually. And so there will be a lot of innovation to come in the next couple of years.
That's fantastic. I mean, I have 5 kids, so I need granularity when I'm looking for my hotel. So I'm a frequent user. So listen, Axel, congratulations once again to a very successful IPO and to becoming a public CFO. You've done it in a fantastic way, and I think hopefully through this talk we've kind of deciphered the mystic world that the IPO or the public market is. And essentially, I think the key message to you, from you to everyone here, is that if you stay focused and you do it efficiently, life goes on, and you really have one more platform which can strengthen your business over time. So listen, I wish you all the best, and thanks again for sharing this insight with us. Thanks.
Thank you.